TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Jerusalem asserts it will not agree to any deal with Hezbollah that does not guarantee the IDF's right to confront any breaches of any agreement. Qatar confirms that it has asked Hamas leadership in Doha to depart. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterates Israel's determination to prevent Iran's nuclear ambitions. Hezbollah is losing both power and ground, with the IDF deepening its achievements on the battlefield, while the Iranian proxy is seemingly lowering the number of projectiles which it fires per day. According to the latest figures, in recent days, Hezbollah has lowered the number of munitions that it fires toward Israel, plummeting from its daily average of 150 projectiles to a significantly diminished average of roughly 80 munitions fired at Israeli communities per day. Nevertheless, the public must remain alert and adhere to the IDF Home Front Command's instructions, since Israel's aerial defense array does not provide for hermetic defense. A reminder hereof occurred yesterday evening when a salvo of merely 5 rockets, to include a ballistic missile, was launched towards central Israel, bringing about minor damage by debris alongside a direct hit by a rocket in the vicinity of the town of Ramat Gan.
Following the sounded alarm, we received reports about rockets that struck at 8:47 p.m. And most of the reported scenes, in contrast to what you see here, are small and insignificant scenes that did not include casualties. At this scene, I can confirm that a rocket struck directly. It isn't debris, but rather a direct strike by a rocket with a heavy payload. The hit, which you can see at the upper part of the building, is part of the engine of the rocket. The rocket itself struck the ground, consequently sparking an electric pole ablaze. That's the cause of the fire that you can see. From this location, 6 casualties were evaluated in separate degrees of injury. According to paramedics, there is 1 casualty severely wounded, 4 moderately injured, and 1 in light condition.
Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed Israeli parliament's plenum yesterday, during the course of which he stressed that the most important ingredient for victory in the multi-front war is unity. Netanyahu went on to stress, in contrast to various allegations, that the Islamist Hamas was the sole actor that rejected all efforts to reach a negotiated solution to the year-long conflict in the Gaza Strip, to include the release of the remaining 101 hostages from Hamas captivity.
Here is the simple truth. It is not pleasant to hear it, but hear it. Contrary to what is said in the studios and what is said here in this hall today, Hamas and not Israel is the obstacle to the deal. Now everyone knows it. The Americans, who are well aware of every detail of the negotiations, say this. This is what Kirby, the spokesman for the National Security Council, says. Brett McGurk, the U.S. Special Envoy for the Middle East, says Hamas is the obstacle. Kirby says Hamas is the obstacle. The deputy head of the CIA says Hamas is the obstacle. Just 5 days ago, the U.S. Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, said Hamas is the refusenick in talks since the beginning of the war. It would be good to see, he says, real, continuous, and effective pressure on Hamas. And the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said just a week ago, it is not Israel that stands in the way of the hostage deal, but Hamas. No matter what Hamas says in public, says Jake Sullivan, what they tell the mediators all the time is one word: no.
It is important to know that in light of Hamas's continued rejection to adopt a deal, effectively sticking to its delusional demands of an Israeli surrender, Qatar, under U.S. pressure, asked the political leadership of Hamas to leave Doha.
Leaders of Hamas that are within the negotiating team are now not in Doha, and as you know, they move between different capitals. I don't want to get into the details of what that means, but what I can tell you very clearly is that the office of Hamas in Doha was created for the sake of the mediation process. Obviously, when there is no mediation process, the office itself doesn't have any function other than being part of the mediation process. So at the moment, I can confirm that they are not in Doha, but I won't go into the details of how that, what that means, basically.
It is important to note that the remarks by the Qatari Foreign Ministry spokesman are not accurate, since Hamas' office was opened in Doha in 2012, which Qatari officials then claimed to have been in response to a request by the Obama administration. Irrespective of semantics, however, the Qatari Foreign Ministry stressed that U.S., Qatari, and Egyptian negotiations between Hamas and Israel have reached a dead end.
When it comes to the mediation process right now, it is suspended unless we take a decision to reverse that, which is based on the positions of both sides and their willingness to come into the negotiations with a positive spirit. We don't see that the office will hold any reason for being here in Doha. But the decision to close it down, close down the office permanently, is a decision that you will hear about from us directly, and it shouldn't be part of media speculation.
Meanwhile, amid reports that Turkey, a U.S. ally and long-standing member of NATO, had welcomed the Hamas leadership with open arms, Washington is now calling on Ankara to extradite the terrorists to the United States.
Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization that has murdered a number of Americans, continues to hold to this day 7 American citizens hostage, and of course, that's not even to speak of the citizens of other countries that it has murdered and that it has held hostage. So to the extent that members of Hamas are in Turkey or in any country, look, a number of these individuals are under U.S. indictment, have been under U.S. indictment for some time, and we believe that they should be turned over to the United States.
Returning to Jerusalem, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also addressed lawmakers on the multi-front war which Israel is embroiled in, emphasizing that Jerusalem is determined to subdue the axis of evil that is led by the Islamic Republic of Iran.
This war is against one factor first and foremost. This factor is Iran, whose regime has engraved our destruction on its flag. Iran's power is based on 3 things: on the Axis, on the missiles, and on the quest to obtain a nuclear weapon. This is what Iran is. That's the threat. Regarding the Axis, we experienced the attacks of Hamas, and a day later Hezbollah, and then the Houthis joined, and then others also joined. Of course, the militias in Iraq, Syria, and Iran itself.
The Israeli premier further addressed the ongoing battle against the Iranian proxy Hezbollah in Lebanon.
We continue to take down Hezbollah's terror towers in Beirut. We continue to eliminate his commanders. We continue, and this is extremely important, with ground action to eradicate the underground strip adjacent to our border, which is huge. Every day we discover another part of it. It is huge not only in its size, it is huge in weapons, and the means of warfare that are there, which are huge and many, and if Hezbollah had carried out its plot, we are talking about something that would have been several times greater than the disaster we experienced in Gaza. This is of course avoided. We are systematically eliminating it. There is also some expansion of the ground maneuver. However, we are coming to remove this subterranean strip first of all, because it is a necessary condition. It may not be sufficient, but it is a necessary condition for the return of our residents in the north to their homes.
Netanyahu further highlighted U.S.-led negotiations in an attempt to reach an acceptable cessation of hostilities for the war in Lebanon, emphasizing that Israel would accept a deal that would guarantee its security interests, to include an Israeli right to enforce the deal if Hezbollah were to breach it, as was the case with UN Security Council Resolution 1701.
We are currently talking about a possible negotiation toward reaching settlement. The Americans are leading it. I say it is only carried out under fire. It is carried out with a lot of fire. We demand the removal of Hezbollah beyond the Litany River. We have additional demands that I will not list here, but the most important thing, it is not the paper, even if there is a paper, and its importance shouldn't be diminished. But we will be required to ensure security in the north with systematic action, not only against attacks by Hezbollah that may come, even if there is a ceasefire. No one is saying that it will last. So it is not only our response, a preventive reaction, a retaliation to an attack, it is also the ability to prevent the strengthening of Hezbollah, and for this we are working, and work first of all by taking action that prevents the arming of Hezbollah via Syria. We are hitting the border crossings and we strike targets in Syria. We are committed to not allowing Hezbollah to return to the situation it was in on October 6th, and it is no longer there. But we want to preserve the fact that it is not there, and create a security reality that allows our residents to return to their homes.
Meanwhile, in Beirut, U.S. Special Envoy Amos Hochstein met with Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabil Berri earlier today, after which the American emissary voiced urgency for reaching an agreement.
Today we've had, just now, very constructive talks with Speaker Berri, and we have continued to narrow the gaps through the discussions over the last few weeks, and specifically today we continued to significantly narrow the gaps. This is a moment of decision-making. I'm here in Beirut to facilitate that decision, but it's ultimately the decision of the parties to reach a conclusion to this conflict. It is now within our grasp.
While it remains unclear whether Hezbollah will capitulate to Israeli demands, Jerusalem is seemingly not losing focus on the main threat to Israel's existence, namely Iran's nuclear ambitions. In this regard, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asserted to Israel's parliament members that the State of Israel remains committed to prevent the Ayatollah regime's pursuit of nuclear weapons.
We will still be tested on our ability to thwart Iran's nuclear program. It's not a secret. It was published. There is a certain component of their nuclear program that was damaged in this October 26th attack. But still, the program itself, its ability to operate here, it has not yet been thwarted. We delayed it under our leadership for about a decade. Iran would have been where it is today 10 years ago if it weren't for the actions we took both in the operational field and in the political field. However, it has made progress. It progressed in enrichment. It still has a long way to go in other areas. Nevertheless, the test is on us, on the government of Israel, on the State of Israel, on our friend, the United States. I had quite a few conversations on this subject, both with President Biden and with President-elect Trump just recently. The test is on us. Because if we don't deal with the nuclear program, then all the other problems will come back and emerge, both vis-a-vis the so-called axis of evil, and in relation to the weapons proliferation, and in other matters. And that is why we are obliged to do it.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to initially encourage you, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. Moreover, if you're blessed by our productions, which are exclusively donation-based and as such broadcast free of charge, please consider making a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.